Hidden among the mesas and canyons of northern New Mexico lies one of the Southwest's most remarkable archaeological treasures, a place where ancient stone dwellings cling to volcanic cliffs, where hand-carved caves tell stories of lives lived centuries ago, and where the echoes of the ancestral Pueblo people still resonate through the canyon walls. This is Bandelier National Monument, a 33,000-acre preserve that protects over 10,000 years of human history and some of the most stunning cliff dwellings in North America. To understand Bandelier, we first need to understand the land itself. The story begins over 1 million years ago with one of the most catastrophic volcanic eruptions in Earth's history. The Valles Caldera supervolcano, located just west of present-day Bandelier, exploded with such force that it ejected over 150 cubic miles of rock and ash into the atmosphere. The pyroclastic flows from this eruption created a unique rock called tuff, a soft, porous volcanic stone that would prove perfect for the ancient inhabitants who arrived thousands of years later. It was soft enough to carve with stone tools, yet durable enough to provide shelter for centuries. The layers of this volcanic ash compressed over time, creating the cliffs and mesas that define Bandelier's landscape today. And it's within these cliffs that the ancestral Pueblo people would create their remarkable homes. The ancestral Pueblo people first arrived in Frioles Canyon around 1150 CE, though evidence suggests humans passed through this region as early as 10,000 BCE. But it was during the 12th and 13th centuries that this canyon transformed into a thriving community. At its peak, Frioles Canyon supported several hundred people living in multi-story Pueblo structures and carved cliff dwellings. These weren't primitive shelters, they were sophisticated homes, part of a complex society with developed agriculture, intricate trade networks, and rich ceremonial traditions. The people grew corn, beans, and squash on the canyon floor and the mesas above. They hunted deer, elk, and rabbit. They gathered piñon nuts and wild plants, and they created stunning black-on-white pottery that rivals any produced in the ancient Southwest. What makes Bandelier particularly unique is the combination of architectural styles found here. You'll see freestanding masonry pueblos built on the canyon floor, cliff dwellings tucked into natural alcoves, and most distinctively, cavates, rooms carved directly into the soft volcanic tuff of the cliff faces. These cavates are Bandelier's signature feature. Using stone tools, the inhabitants excavated hundreds of rooms from the canyon walls. You can still see the marks of their tools on the walls, and the holes where wooden roof beams, called vigas, were inserted to support additional structures built in front of the carved rooms. The largest structure in the canyon was Tiyuni, a circular pueblo that once stood 3 stories tall with over 400 rooms surrounding a central plaza. This wasn't just housing. The circular design suggests ceremonial significance, a gathering place for the entire community. Above Tiyuni, carved into the cliff face, is the famous Longhouse, a series of cavates that extends over 800 feet along the canyon wall. Some of these rooms were living spaces, others were storage facilities for precious corn and seeds, and some served ceremonial purposes. One of the most intriguing features is Alcove House, also known as Ceremonial Cave, perched 140 feet off the canyon floor. Accessible today by climbing 4 wooden ladders and 140 feet of switchbacks, this large cavate was likely a kiva, a sacred ceremonial chamber. Standing inside this space, looking out over the canyon, it's impossible not to feel connected to the spiritual practices of the people who gathered here. And then, by the mid-1500s, they were gone. The cliff dwellings fell silent, the pueblos emptied, and Frioles Canyon was abandoned. Why did they leave? The answer is complex and still debated by archaeologists, but several factors likely contributed. A severe drought in the late 1200s put enormous stress on agriculture. The population had grown large enough that local resources were becoming strained. Social and political pressures may have encouraged people to seek new opportunities elsewhere. But this wasn't an end to their story. It was a migration. The descendants of Bandelier's inhabitants didn't vanish. They moved to pueblos along the Rio Grande, where their descendants live today. The people of Cochiti Pueblo, San Ilfonso Pueblo, and other nearby communities maintain direct cultural and spiritual connections to Bandelier. The name Bandelier comes from Adolphe Bandelier, a Swiss-American archaeologist who studied the ruins in the 1880s. But the Keres-speaking people of Cochiti Pueblo know this place by other names, and their oral histories preserve knowledge about this canyon that stretches back far longer than written records. Bandelier National Monument was established in 1916 to protect these irreplaceable cultural resources. It reminds us that this land has been home to people for millennia, that sophisticated societies flourished in these canyons long before European contact, and that the connections between past and present remain vibrant and alive. When you visit Bandelier, you're not just looking at ruins, you're standing in rooms where families lived, laughed, and loved. You're walking paths worn smooth by thousands of footsteps. You're touching walls carved by hands that knew this land intimately. And in that connection, across the centuries, the spirit of Bandelier endures.